Welcome to the AME Food Safety Show. Today's topics: bacteria in food, become a food safety activist, high fructose corn syrup, it's everywhere, and foodborne illness. How do you know when you have it? Let's begin. Our first topic of news, and it's astounding. If anybody within the sound of my voice shops at Walmart, Target, Walgreens, or GNC, they were recently cited by the New York Attorney General's office for selling supplements that were later tested and not found to be correctly identified. In other words, if you bought vitamin C at Walmart, Target, Walgreens, or GNC, it was tested to be not vitamin C. And it goes on with a number of other items. And some items have been found to be allergic. The challenge with that is deception, fraud, and abuse of humans. They buying something thinking it was something else. Let's begin with our first topic of the day, which is bacteria in food. As we look at this chart, we're seeing scanning electron pictographs of E. coli species, Salmonella species, and Listeria species. This particular diagram will show those organisms. They're very smart. They've been around before humans. They're going to be around a lot longer. After we're all dust, they'll still be here. On the particular chart that you see, a picture of E. coli actually approaching the area on a slice of lettuce that emits oxygen, something we're very interested in. And it emits an enzyme which actually opens that vacuole and then hides there when they sense eruption in their life or something dangerous coming. And you see the next slide in the middle there, E. coli 015787. Inside that vacuole, they'll hide. And then when that eruption or that water or that wash has been released, they'll hide and they'll come out again. That happens with Salmonella and Listeria. On the slide, you'll see on the far right-hand side a grade scanning electron pictograph. In that scratch, the U.S. Army found that a number of troops were getting ill at a particular base. They found bacteria in the scratch of stainless steel. Stainless steel is usually considered a food contact surface because it's easily cleaned. Well, in that scratch, if it's not maintained and cleaned, you will see that they found bacteria. They live all around us and can get in our food. Next slide, please. This slide is particularly interesting because it shows that there are over 3,000 subspecies of E. coli, only a few of which will make us sick. They're called hemorrhagic. E. coli 0157 is the most famous of which because it lives primarily in the stomachs of animals. And that transverse, that path toward your stomach is somewhat complex. It could end up in food that you eat. And then what it does, if it's a viable organism, they'll start multiplying until you become ill and you potentially die, depending on your health. But as you look at that chart on the far right-hand side, that is a phylogenetic tree showing the various subspecies of E. coli. Next slide. Salmonella. Salmonella is primarily in poultry, but it can get anywhere, just like E. coli. And you see that pathogenic tree on the right-hand side. It is known as a contaminant under federal regulations. If it's in your food, there's a high likelihood you'll become very ill, vomiting and such. We'll cover that later in the show. Those scanning electron pictographs let you see your enemy up close and personal. Next slide. Listeria. Listeria is a very robust organism. I'll say this as I've said it before. I have interviewed many food production facility owners. I asked them this question: why do you spend millions building a food production facility, keeping it at a low temperature and spending a lot of money cooling it off and maintaining that cool temperature with air conditioning units? The answer I get will astound you. They say, Andy, it's only to keep the food fresh. That's the wrong answer. The right answer is we keep the facility cold to slow the growth of Salmonella and Listeria, strike that, E. coli, but Listeria loves the cold. They actually reproduce in the cold. It's very hard to get rid of. Look at that chart. It can be found on glass, stainless steel, plastic, tile, and concrete. Constant maintenance is required. Last time we talked about apples having Listeria. How did that happen? It was on the food contact surface. The owner of that facility didn't have a good maintenance program. You'll see that Listeria, again, it's 3,000 subspecies, one of which we also often hear about is Listeria monocytogenes. Look at the 2,298 illnesses, almost 500 deaths. Next slide, please. Listeria pathogens facilities. It's a very robust organism. It's like a ping pong ball. Once you clean it in one area, it migrates to another area. The preventative measures are constant, risk-based, data-driven surveillance. Cleaning, that's called sanitation, then testing to make sure that the chemical that you use, the cleaning methodology, was actually efficient and it did its job. Next slide. This slide shows a refrigerator. And on the right-hand side, the average temperature times that product that you put in there will be viable. One of my favorite phrases for people to remember is that food that is left in a refrigerator longer than 4 days is no longer food. It's a biology experiment. Why? You have to constantly monitor that temperature. As a matter of fact, most restaurants are closed by local authorities, health and sanitation officials, when they find that the refrigerator is no longer maintaining a temperature. Why? The warmer that facility is, that refrigerator, the higher growth rates and the shorter time that food is available for human consumption. Next slide. Why is all of this discussion about food and contaminants so important? If you have anyone in your house that fits under these categories, you need to really seriously review your food safety procedures. Anybody with AIDS, HIV, hepatitis A, B, and C, people undergoing cancer treatments, people on medication regimes. How about immunosuppressant drugs? If you watch television at all, you need to constantly look at those commercials that espouse pharmaceutical products that are going to help you make your life wonderful, walking through flowers. That's great. What they don't tell you is that a lot of those medications will reduce your ability to resist infections, contamination from bacteria. If you have a transplant like kidney or hearts or livers, you know this already. What you may not know, if you have a replacement for a hip or a knee or a valve, you need to be constantly monitoring the resistance your body has for those foreign objects. So that means that you need to look at those medications very seriously and your food consumption. We have more older people than we've ever had on the planet, more people over 80. Life expectancy is expected to continue. It won't if you become sick from one of these pathogens. Their immune system becomes less robust as we age. We all know that. What's a particular characteristic of this generation is we have more people locked up inside of rooms playing video games, particularly young people, not going out, exchanging with animals like horses, cows, dogs, cats. They are luring their resistance to bacteria. The more you're around exposed, your resistance builds because you might have a sniffling nose rather than dying. Let me say one thing about lawyers. There is a growing cadre of legal counsel for people that have been harmed by food. A food contamination case is a cash cow to lawyers. Why? Because if I can trace the bacteria at a food plant to your stomach or your loved one's stomach that recently died, that food company will either close or write a check from its insurance policy. So what's the point of this discussion as we get ready for our next segments? In the next segment, we will talk about becoming a food safety activist, not only for yourself, but for the community. Thank you very much.